We are recording.
Morning, everybody.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204.
Carl?
Councilmember Carver Herbert? Here. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Here.
Councilmember Page?
Here.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Here.
Excellent. Stand, join me in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as it's written.
I would second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All right. Clerk, Carl, please.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
All right, moving on to special business. We have the staff reports. Are there any questions for staff that you'd like to answer here?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember?
first of all, I would like to thank Director Thornborough for including graphs on the applications and the processes that are happening. And one small ask to give us a key on what the abbreviations stand for. I think I can intuit most of it, but just to be sure. But thank you very much for doing that.
Okay, all right, any further questions? All right, if you have anything else, please reach out to each council member at your leisure. Okay, now we're moving on to item G. We're going to be talking about SUB FY 2024-06 Edgemere Subdivision. We'll first hear from the applicant. Schneider.
Good evening, Jaden Schneider, 3770 North Jackie Lane, Boise. I did prepare a presentation, which I sent to Hannah, but I don't see her here. And so if she didn't get it, I did bring a flash drive, if I can plug it in. If she didn't.
We can see.
Just in case. Let me give it a shot first and see. You know if it's sharing. It's screen sharing. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. So yes, this is Edgemere Subdivision, preliminary plat and PUD. Just to kind of click through it quickly to give you an idea of what we're looking at here. The site is about half an acre, 0.52 acres. It's zoned R3 medium density residential. 8 attached townhome units are being proposed. 5 of those in one block here that you can see on the left side of the subdivision, and then 3 on the right side, and then 1 private driveway, which is being proposed as the access for all of these individual units. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring up this site. We've been through a few iterations of it, a few with design review committee and then a few with planning and zoning. The original layout for this site had 9 lots in total. There was 5, or sorry, it was 9 building lots. So it went from 5 attached units and then 4 here. And this was a comment that we went through design review. Design review was all right with the total number of units being proposed. However, they wanted to add a few individual comments and a few things in addition to it, which I'll touch on later. But this was the initial layout. Here's the second revision of the layout. And this is what planning and zoning, when we went through, we had 2 planning and zoning meetings. one of the planning and zoning comments was, can you add more open space? And there were concerns about the density of the site, just given such a tight site. So we made some small changes on the second revision of the layout. And then we're on the third revision of the layout right here, which has dropped one of the lots and then added some more space. So I'll kind of split shoe just to kind of point out a few of the main things that we've done here. We've added from the design review committee trellises on here. The idea with this one was so that we would have an access point. So when people are walking down the common driveway on this sidewalk portion, they would have some sort of way to access into the site. That was one of the questions or comments that they would like to see there. There was also the addition of more fenestration on this building here, the one it's kind of the northwest. Now, technically, this site is turned just to fit this page nicely, but it's more of the northwest side of the site right here. There's more fenestration on this building just to kind of create something that looks a little bit more like the front of the building, even though technically it's the side. So that street side, it looks a little bit nicer there. We've increased the landscaping area, and going back to that was the planning and zoning comment. Can we increase the landscaping area? We've removed one of the units here, which was part of the 4-pack. And then we've also added 4 full-size guest parking stalls, which when we removed one of the units, we had extra space for additional landscaping. So there's a few changes that we made just to that site based off of those meetings. And I'll kind of touch on them a little bit more and what we've done and how we're trying to address those issues or those comments from planning and zoning and design review. But generally for the site, for the existing site, it's the zone residential, as I said, that R3. It has mobile homes around it. There's single family dwelling units that are detached, and then there's single family dwelling units attached in the immediate vicinity to the site. Right now, the site does have a common driveway, or at least a shared access. It's technically not a common driveway in the city's system, but it acts as so because it provides access for the 2 mobile homes that are on the lot right now, and then the 2 lots that are right next to it on kind of the southeast side of the site. So there's an access point for both of these homes and both of these homes that are taking access off of this existing drive. That's where you can see here where we're proposing the common drive to be right now. And that would remain a viable access point for not only this site, but also for the neighbors as well. Going back to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, at the first commission meeting, one of their comments, as I mentioned, was they would like more open space. So here on the left is the updated building footprint for the 5-pack or the building with the 5 attached units. We've reduced, and you can see it here on the right, this end unit was a tandem or a side-by-side interior garage. We've reduced that one from a side-by-side garage to a 15-foot wide tandem garage, and then added that open space coming back to this side right here next to this emergency turnaround portion for the fire department and whatnot. So we added some space right there by reducing this lot right here, which we're calling, I think it's lot number 5 because we number them from the buildings. So we've taken lot 5, we've reduced the building side and added that to the open space right there. Going back to these new 3 buildings over here, this is what the updated side is. On the left, it's now a 3-pack, and the other building over there on the right side was the original, which was the 4 buildings. Basically, the only change that we made was we dropped off one of the end units and made it into 3 buildings there. So again, just going back to the idea of adding more open space. Now, touching back on top of that idea, though, with the 3 units, we've now rotated it because we believe that this allows us to add better parking. We looked at the idea of keeping the buildings orientated in their original orientation, all facing the driveway on the long portion of the driveway. It just provided us better parking opportunities here for the guest parking stalls. I think technically it works. So if that was something that city council said, you know, hey, can we go back? It needs to be this way. I think that's something we could work with. Just when we were playing around with it, it seemed to be better to provide the 4 guest parking stalls in this configuration than it did to keep the buildings north-south. Now, it has been a couple months since we updated it. So if there's the fine tuning of it, I might have to go back and refresh my memory on exactly what those were, but this is what we came up with when we were trying to come up with a parking option that provided full-size guest parking stalls. Just talking about the interior landscaping area, there's some stuff in the packet and some questions that Hannah had brought up and that we were trying to answer as best we can. There's a few different things, if I understand it correctly. There's the PUD portion and then the subdivision portion, which talks about open space percentage. There's the landscaping percentage, which needs to be 5% open space percentage, and then the open space in total, which is the 10%. So there's a bit of designation on what is classified as each one. I'll try to touch on it as best that I know how, but it might be a question better for staff to try to understand what we're talking about here. But the idea for the overall open space is we have these walking and these areas that are open to the public. So we've dedicated those areas with easements with the idea of providing access for residents to the side of their homes or the front of their homes here, with dedication of an easement so that they could be walking paths for everybody to cross over it. So what we're saying in this exhibit is that the highlighted area is about 4,000 square feet of open space. So what we're trying to show is, hey, we consider all of this to be open and available for use for the community. That includes the interior areas that I mentioned earlier. Now, one of the things that we will also talk about is on the landscaping plan, there's a comment in regard to what is considered open space and qualified. One of the qualified portions is that it can't be within that setback. So what you'll see here is we've taken out a lot of that area wrapping around the buildings because it's technically within that setback. So this is what we're trying to say. If I understand it correctly, this is that area that's outside of the setback. Now, that might be a question for staff saying, no, Jaden, you're wrong. This technically doesn't meet it, but we believe that we're at least closer and trying to meet the intent of the code, which is providing this open space area in the correct areas. The buildings themselves, just generally what we're looking at, the idea would be a 3-story building. The access points, I'll kind of switch back here again. The access points for the car would be the garages facing the common driveway, and then the front door of all the units would be along that walking portion here on the back side of the buildings, which is one on this south side of this building, then one on the east side over here. So that would be the southeast elevations and the northeast elevations, switching back between them. This is the 5 units, similar, going back to the idea of design review, we've added the trellises and added balconies to these buildings to provide just a little bit more visual appeal to the units so that they weren't just a big block building on the side and it wasn't just a hard corner on it. The idea of the paint and stone selections of what's being proposed, the builder is proposing some stone, some stucco, some wood with a variation of styles just to kind of keep the idea of everything being not just one stucco side, trying to add some variations to it. Going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, the 4-foot wide concrete pedestrian section. There is that pedestrian section that we're adding along the south side of this driveway. And I'll touch on it a little bit more, but just kind of give a quick overview. Again, that would be for the pedestrian access to come into the buildings or into the lots as best we can. That cross-access easement that we're saying we're providing for all the pedestrian access. It's a 10-foot front yard setback for these buildings here, 10-foot front yard setbacks for these buildings in the 3-pack faced east-west up in this corner right there. And then with the parking stalls as well. So just as idea of the site, so you can look at it and get fresh eyes on it. I've looked at it 1,000 times, so I know it really well, but trying to bring you up to speed on what's going on. The parcel was originally one larger parcel that was split off into 2 parcels. It was prior to the cutoff, which I don't remember the exact date, but it's like 67 or 87 or so. There's a time in which the parcel could have been split and it's not an illegal split, or at least code says, hey, anything that's taken place before this date is not a legal split. So this parcel is technically prior to the date, which makes this split legal in the city's eyes, or at least what city code allows for a subdivision. There was some comments about that on, hey, if this was just sold off as a quitclaim deed last year, this would be an illegal split. We can't move that forward. We did look at the quitclaim deed, or the deed of trust. It is prior to the date which city codes allows. So this is a legal subdivision for this parcel right here. So that was one of the questions that we worked through in design review committee. Some of the constraints with this site I may have touched on, but just to go over again, this driveway portion, there's about 25 feet of space between the side property line for this front lot and then this existing home property line over here. So what we have going on is a 20-foot wide portion of road stretching from the frontage right of way to the actual meaty part of the lot. We've talked with the fire department, that the fire department's okay with what we're proposing and everything going on in this situation right here, because where we go from the 20-foot wide connection point down this stem, we belly out into a 26-foot wide connection all the way in front of all of these units. So everything that's in front of these units is 26 feet wide, which allows us to provide that fire apparatus road width that they require. It's a 26-foot wide minimum. And then on top of that, this fire department requires 15 foot of setback from that 26-foot wide pavement, so that if they ever needed to put out the legs of a fire truck with the ladder portion, the ladder truck, they could do that and then they could reach the building. So one of the constraints with this site and what we're proposing here is the fact that because this site needs the 26-foot wide pavement section and a 15-foot wide section here for the driveways, again, so the fire truck can have that, the legs to stretch out, and then you need to be at least 26 feet behind that, so you're not just going straight up with the ladder portion. We're kind of stuck with what we can and can't make work with these buildings. So when we have a 26-foot wide section and a 15-foot wide concrete section, the buildings themselves are limited on how deep they can go. This is one of the comments that's in the staff report, speaking to the interior garages not being deep enough to be considered 2 tandem car garages that are meeting code. What we have in this situation is 2 tandem car garages that are technically about a foot short on both. So 2 feet in total across the two tandem portions. So a car parked here in this front portion and a car parked in the second, instead of being, I believe it's 40 feet in depth in total, it's technically about 38 feet total. So one of the reasons that we're running into that trouble is because in order to provide the 2-car garage, we need to be 15 feet back from that actual side portion of the 26-foot wide fire apparatus road. We need to put this here, and then or the building portion, like the garage portion, the 38 feet that we're proposing, and then we need to meet the front setback. So it's a little hard to explain, and I hope I'm doing a good job of it. But generally, when you look at the actual garage portion, which is this large white portion, this is where the cars would be parking. And then we are trying to sneak as much space as we can in the front portion of these homes to provide an entrance and an immediate staircase. There's really no livable space on the first floor because we really don't have a good way otherwise to get people into the house and meet the tandem parking garage minimums. If we took those extra 2 feet, it's less than the ADA width in order to open your door, step into your house, and go up the stairs. So there's a few issues with trying to work around that site. So I'm happy to discuss on it more if there's questions about it, but I'm trying to hopefully explain it in a decent way on why we're asking for a variance on the tandem portion and the total depth of the lots there. We had previously not provided any guest parking stalls, and going back to the original layout, you can see here, we had originally proposed guest parking to be in the driveway portions. However, that driveway portion was 15 feet deep, meaning that it's a compact guest parking stall. Now, with all of these lots only providing 15 feet of separation from the driveway portion where there'd be no parking and the actual garage door, that would mean that all of the parking stalls would be compact. Planning and zoning didn't like that, and they said, we would really like you to have guest parking stalls. So that comes back to this idea now where we've reduced the total number of units and provided 4 full-size parking stalls, which do meet the minimum for this size of site, this number of lots. Anything less than 10 lots is 1/2 guest parking stall per unit. So with the 8 units, 1/2 is 4, and here are the 4 guest parking stalls. There's a few other small things that we brought up with variance requests, and I can kind of touch on them, but again, I'll happy to talk more about it. One of the variance requests is the piping or tiling of the ditch. On the existing plan, you can see it here, sort of. There's an existing ditch that pipes in on this portion of the site. It's open ditched along the southwest or south portion of the site, and then pipes back in and is open across the neighboring parcel. Technically, city code asks that if there is a portion of ditch that is open, it remains open. The reason that we're asking to pipe that ditch is just because this is the front of the homes. Now, we believe that we found a rule that allows us to do it because the portion of the ditch that comes into the site is already tiled or piped, meaning that we could ask for that variance to extend it. And I believe that city staff is in agreement that we are meeting the intent of the code as best that we can. So that is one of the variants that we were asking for there. And generally we think that we're meeting it as best we can, but overall with this site, I'll kind of wrap it up here and you can ask questions if you have, but overall with this site, we're really just trying to make the most of a tough site. And we think that we're doing that with what we're proposing. One of the comments from planning and zoning was, well, can you just reduce the lot and give us more open space and give us more parking? It's like, yes, we've done it. However, with the R3 zoning, it does ask for a minimum of 14 units per acre. This being the 1/2 or 0.52 acres, it's technically 7 point something units per acre for this site. So with 8 units, if we go below down to 7, it would be rounding down on that side of the minimum density for this site. So we're basically at what we think is minimum density for this site with 8 units per acre. So the city has suggested to us, or at least in the code, that, hey, this is kind of the minimum density we would like. And we've whittled the site down to what we think we can provide, where we provide guest parking stalls, where we provide open space, and where we try to meet those minimum areas. I don't believe I missed anything, but I'm sure I did. But with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Before we begin, I forgot to make sure that does anybody have a conflict with this particular subdivision? Just said that at the beginning. So I wanted to bring that up before we ask any questions. So any conflicts?
No, sir.
No,
Any questions for Mr. Schneider?
I'll reserve my questions until after the staff report.
Okay. All right. Ms. Thornborough? Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Mr. Schneider did a great job of being very thorough and going through the application and some of its history. I do want to note this application came in under the old plan unit development ordinance. The applicant team has been working for some time to try to work through this application, and that's why it's under old code. It did come in under previous code. That's why you're not seeing the more updated code applied, including some of the things that should just be glaring, like the more than 4 units on a common drive. And with that, just a point of clarification regarding his presentation, the old R3 standards would also apply versus the requirements that we see that have been more recently adopted into code. And with that, currently, as noted, this application is for 8 units, 8 2-bedroom units that are 3 stories high. And there are 5 waivers that were requested, including more than 4 units on the common drive, parking dimensional standards, perimeter landscaping, the street tree requirement, as well as common open space. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend denial of this application. And as such, the draft recommendation that you have before you is written in denial of the required findings, as well as there aren't conditions of approval. Just on the onset of this presentation, the findings start on page 70 of your packet. If you were to move to approve this application, staff would ask for additional time to revise the findings, or in front of you tonight, staff has passed out what the staff recommended, conditions of approval, and findings to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so that could be a basis as well. If you were to adopt those, they would need to be slightly tweaked to consider the dropping of that one lot that was presented to you tonight that wasn't before the commission, as well as addressing these 4 parking spots. So there would still need to be some updates even to the staff recommended conditions to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission felt that they did support certain waivers, such as tiling of the irrigation facility, deviations to the sidewalk standards, or allowing for more than 4 units on a common drive. But they were concerned about the parking and the reliance on the tandem garage and the dimensional standards waivers requested within the parking. And they felt that the number of units and the proposal before you just had too many waivers, where it felt more like the waivers were being utilized to usurp code regulations, and then bypassing the standards rather than enhancing the overall project as the intent of the plan unit development as a tool. Where it's, I'm not articulating that well, but in essence, the plan unit development tool is not for variances or waivers. It's intended to allow for waivers to create an enhanced development. Some of the concerns that are identified in the staff report. Well, first, there's just not room really for a street tree once you have the 20-foot access. And here you see the sidewalk to these units, to their front door here, but the sidewalk is discontinued here and doesn't come around here. So that pedestrian access, where there is a sidewalk, access to that sidewalk is not clear how people would get there. And I also want to bring up that this didn't go to plan or the design review, and so that may be an oversight by the applicant team and just bringing this through here. And Mr. Schneider was correct on how the overlap and why that landscaping doesn't count, where code specifically does say that you have to take out what's in the setbacks. And much of what is included too includes the sidewalk. And then another note, concern that the staff has brought up in the staff report that came to you is this is the location of the HVAC equipment right at the front door. And a lot of what we're seeing, there is some grass and 2 trees internally, but this is low growing lavender with some interspersed junipers. And so with that gravel and concrete and asphalt and the HVAC system, this may be a fairly uncomfortable transversing to these front doors and around, and very little greenery that would reduce heat and soften the effect on site. And of note, in the staff report, only 3% of the required 10% of open space is met. And then this perimeter landscaping just isn't as wide as code calls for. Code requests that landscaping be 6 feet wide at maturity and allow for trees that's on a spacing of 1 per 15 feet. And that is not occurring here. There is bicycle parking located here. And again, the overall number of parking is not deficient. However, there is a reliance on the tandem parking where there's one room for one full-size parking and then one reduced parking space. And then these areas back here to be considered parking spaces, they would all be compact spaces exceeding the overall allowed compact space. These are the full-size guest parking, which can count and be code compliant. And with that, I do want to note again, just for your discussion purposes, that the findings as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission are in your draft decision document starting on page 70. And there would not be conditions of approval in that this is a recommendation for denial coming through the Planning and Zoning Commission. However, this document in front of you is what was provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission with potential conditions of approval. With that, I stand for questions.
Questions, Councilor?
So many.
No, we'll move on to public hearing. The applicant respond.
I'm in support of that. Moving on.
Okay, all right. Now open the public hearing for SUB FY 2024-006. Colin, do we have anybody in the crowd interested in testifying? Anybody online? Okay. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And Mr. Snyder, you're welcome to respond.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jenna, for that. Yeah, it's a tough site, and we're trying to do what we can with the site. Speaking with Bill, the owner, and whatnot over here, just one of the comments was, hey, planning and zoning was asking for things that we tried to meet as best we can with the recommendation of denial, and Jenna mentioned it. That was with the old site plan with the 4 units, and since then we have dropped the 1 unit. So we do think that we're trying to meet the intent of code as best we can, despite the challenges and shortfalls that we may or may not have in some particular areas. So I'm hopeful that we've come up with something that City Council likes. That being said, I am always open to suggestions and comments in regard to trying to make the site better as is, because as we've hopefully shown with Design Review Committee and Planning and Zoning, we have made changes and we have tried to mold this site to meet what the interests of the public and the interests of the city are. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, or try to at least.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Any questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question.
Councilmember.
So one of the matters that was brought up was the connectivity to those back units. So can you address that? Because based on what's been shown to us and based on the staff report with Ms. Thornborough presented, it still looks as if there's really not any connectivity, actual real connectivity back to those units.
Yes, so we have the sidewalk adjacent to the parking stalls that are north-south on that. But if City Council wanted that parking or that sidewalk to just wrap all the way around the site, that's something that we could absolutely work around on our side. If that provided a better thoroughfare or connectivity for pedestrian access through it, if that answers your question, we'd be happy to continue that sidewalk and provide connectivity, unless there's other concerns about specifically that sidewalk portion.
Follow up. So if you were to do that, where would you put the bicycle parking?
I can pull it back up.
Let's bring it up.
Oh. on the original plan, we had the bicycle parking right here in this corner right here. And I feel confident that we would be able to find some sort of space in anywhere within this area adjacent to either the a sidewalk here, or if we wrap the sidewalk around somewhere in these areas where it would be in a convenient location pedestrian wise away from the actual vehicular traffic and provide adequate bike parking. So I think that that's where, off the top of my head, where we tried to put it before and where we would continue to try to place it now, or at least if there was a change to it.
Other questions?
I do have other questions.
Counselor?
So regarding the tiling of the ditch, so have you actually gone through the process of actually getting approval to be able to do that with Fairview Acres?
Yeah, so we've worked with Fairview Acres. They basically said that as long as the city was okay with it, they'd be okay with it. Their comment was that they were a little bit more lenient on it. They said, we really don't have an issue. Their comment that in between a conversation, so I don't have it in writing, but basically was, we actually like to have it tiled or like to have it piped because it means less maintenance for them in regard to maintaining the ditch and actually maintaining that portion. There still is maintenance in the fact that they would have to, if there's a clog or if there's leaves that they'd have to pull out of it. But generally their comment was that they prefer to have it tiled because then there's less evaporation, less seepage into the ground, and it generally just seems to work, I guess, better for what they were saying. So they've given their okay or their blessing as long as the city said. So mom said it's okay if dad said it's okay.
One more follow-up.
Councilmember?
So are there any restrictions of what you can build on top of that tiling?
It would be outside of an easement. So that pedestrian easement that we're discussing, that 10-foot wide pedestrian easement and access, it would all be within that. And so the comment to them was, can we build this pathway over top of it? And it seems like everything's okay with them. It's basically just the standard, hey, we need to have at least 1.5 feet of cover over top of our pipe so that you're not busting your pipe when you're laying down your concrete and things like that. So generally, as long as we're not building a home on top of it, they were fine because they said that they can work within it.
Thank you. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Council President?
Mr. Schneider, thanks for the presentation. I appreciate the complication in working with these dimensions that you have before you. I also appreciate the design iterations. Seeing that anthology was informative. I do believe, and I don't want to be the authority on this, so maybe this is a question for Mr. Wadhams, but I do believe once a ditch is tiled, then that becomes, the maintenance of that tiling becomes incumbent on the property owner.
I believe you're correct, and we would have that under the HOA jurisdiction for that portion. That, or at least that's how we've proposed it in the past on sites similar to this.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No.
I thought
yes, I
your
agree.
comment was that the Fairview Acres had said, well, hey, look, we like it because we're not maintaining it. It's less maintenance for us. And I'm like, it's 100% maintenance for you.
Yes.
Or the HOA, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, that's in my understanding of how it works, at least from this side, was yes, it gets written into the CCNRs that this portion on the site would be owned and maintained by the HOA, and as long as the water doesn't stop for down users, it can be their maintenance and their responsibility.
Thank you.
That's how I remember.
Mr. Mayor.
Council President?
Yes. So Mr. Schneider, I want to turn a little bit to the trash carts.
Yes.
I saw that there was discussion about different ways to manage the solid waste. With there being 8 units there, by my math, there's going to be at least 16 of these carts. And if I understood the application correctly, the carts would be placed on each person's individual drive. And so this parking plan relies on that being a parking space. So I see conflict with where the carts sit on trash day. Also, I'm curious what this, I guess I'm going to call it the bottom right homeowner does with their trash carts, because the mechanism for the truck isn't going to be able to grab those carts.
Yes. So you're correct in regard to where the placement of the trash carts would be. It would be proposed at the end of the driveways. Our conversation with Republic Services at the original onset of this site was where would you like them? You know, do we want to bring them to the street? Do we want to put them on the actual private driveway themselves? What works? And they said what they would like us to do is provide the just the end of the driveways, not on the actual street itself for the fire lane access. Provide them at the end of the driveways, and as long as they have a turning radius for the truck to turn around, they would be okay with what we're proposing. However, I do see your point here for this very end unit. If the truck comes around and it can only pick up on one side, I don't think I have an answer for you. I think that is something that I may have overlooked on my side, and I would have to check with Republic Services to make sure that they are okay with what we're having to propose there. Yes.
Yeah, respectfully,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if Republic Service realized that is a designated parking space in order to meet the parking requirement, because it seems like there's a perpetual conflict there.
In regard to the parking requirement, if I'm understanding correctly, the driveway portion was originally the proposed guest parking, and we were saying, hey, it's a guest parking for each stall. In the new proposal, all guest parking is sufficient within the 4 guest parking stalls that we're proposing, meaning that the driveways do not need to provide any guest parking stalls. A homeowner or an owner could use the driveway portion as a parking stall if it fit the compact stall, but that's where the variance or the waiver request that we're asking for the tandem stalls comes into play, meaning that we're asking, or we're saying that we think the owners will have 2 vehicles. They will be parking in the tandem garage interior to the actual unit itself. Any guest parking will be supplied by the 4 full-size guest parking stalls, meaning that no one's driveways would have to be designated as a guest parking stall. It could be used as one, but we've provided sufficient guest parking with the 4 stalls. Does that answer that question?
It does. And Mr. Schneider, respectfully, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Schneider, do you have a couple cars?
I have 1 car. My wife has 1 car. Yes.
Okay. Would your 2 cars end to end fit in that tandem garage?
I don't mean to be like gotcha on this one, and I hope I don't come off as rude on this one, but we did get this question before, and I threw it in the presentation just in case it came up. So please don't come off as
I'm so happy I asked.
Yes. The garage depths are 38 feet. The 40-foot total is what we're talking about. The best-selling truck in America is the Ford F-150. The F-150 XLT is about 244 inches long, 20.3 feet. Best-selling SUV in America is the Toyota RAV4. The length of the RAV4 is about 181 feet or inches, 15.08 feet. So the RAV4 plus the F-150, the 2 best-selling vehicles in America, 35.5 feet. Going back to the second best SUVs in America, the Ford Explorer, so a larger SUV than the RAV4, 199 inches, so 16.58 feet. So a Ford Explorer and a Ford F-150 is 37 feet, nose to toes on it. Both can fit inside of this reduced garage. So, I don't mean to be rude about it, but I think we've thought it through in regard to at least if somebody was buying it and they're like, I drive an F-150 and my wife drives an F-150 and I drive a Ford Explorer, it would still fit in this garage. If 2 people bought 2 F-150s and they wanted to live here, they would not fit. And I don't have an answer for that one. If there was 2, big truck lovers that said, we want to buy this unit right here, I don't think that this is a good fit for them, and it would not fit. But based off of what we think reasonably people buy, and at least what's selling in America, they do fit.
Well,
So,
thank you for that.
yes.
That's compelling. I think you did your research on that. Mr. Schneider, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Schneider,
Council President?
can we talk a little bit about the fire truck?
Yes, absolutely.
So I understand that the mouth of, I'm going to call this the mouth, where the street meets the common drive.
Yep.
That this is inadequate for the outriggers at that position. However, your argument is it's the outrigging mechanisms are suitable further into the drive as it widens. Is that my?
Yes, correct.
Is the fire station aware of this?
Yes, they've reviewed it. They've provided their comments, and they've said that at least in the original layout, which was more dense and with the same idea of that skinnier portion and then a larger portion down here, you can kind of see what we were proposing. They, sorry, it was this one. They said that this was sufficient. Now, what we had proposed originally was a 20-foot wide section through here, pavement section through here, bellying out into a 26-foot wide pavement section. And then I call it the Snoopy nose, but the emergency turnaround portion was only 20 feet wide. What we've done on this updated layout was provided this as 26 feet wide now, because we've known that the fire department, if they were to be accessing these 3 units, they would need that 26-foot wide for the fire apparatus or the ladder portion, and they would need that for the legs of the truck. So what we've done is provided 26 feet here for these units, 26 feet here so the fire truck could park on this one and provide it here. But yes, in the original layout and the layout that we've shown them for the site, which was this one, they reviewed it and said that yes, even though this is only 20 feet wide and this was 26 feet wide, they were okay and it was adequate for them.
So just a follow-up question, and respectfully, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Schneider,
Council President, go ahead.
if even one person in this proposed development or the other 2 homes that are served by this common drive temporarily parks their car in front of their house, let's say on the applicant side, while they're unloading groceries. And if I mean, we're talking about life, human life. And I'm hesitant, and it's kind of a rhetorical question, but I just have to say it.
Of course. Yeah. And I completely agree with you. The only response that I have is that the fire department reviewed it and gave their conditions of approval, one being no parking there. And they've given we've reviewed it on it. I don't want to say they're blessing on it, but they've given their review and provided their comments. If it was approved, it would need to have no parking. The fire apparatus road would need to be sufficient to support a 70,000-pound fire truck, things like that. So they've given their conditions of approval on it. So that's my only response that I have. And I definitely do agree and appreciate the fact that human life is important to you, and as for me as well. Thank you.
I don't want to be the only one talking, council members. Are there other questions?
I have a question, Mr. Schneider. Just because I know how people like big trucks. So let's say I have an F-250, right? And it doesn't fit. So I'm parking my RAV4 in the garage, but I'm putting my F-250 in the driveway. My understanding is the driveway is only suited for a compact car.
Yes, if you had a vehicle that was over 15 feet, it would be hanging into the fire apparatus road, which would be against the CC&Rs, against what we are proposing. So the idea for this site is that the CC&Rs would say that you cannot park anywhere past the end of your driveway and delineate it. The way we're showing we delineate it is the concrete driveway and the asphalt parking itself. So, hey, if any part of your car is over here, you are not meeting the HOA guidelines, and it would be governed by the HOA in that situation. So the idea would be we'd write it into the CC&Rs. But yes, in that scenario, if you were hanging over, you would be in violation, and the fire truck apparatus road would be hindered from that. So
great,
yes.
thank you. Council members, any further questions? Okay. All right, so could I have any motions?
So we're going into deliberation?
No, yeah, deliberations, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Schneider.
So
Yes,
the public
deliberation.
hearing has been closed.
Yes, it was closed. Yeah, so deliberations on the application, council members. Thank you, Mr. Council President.
All right, council members. Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll start the conversation on this. Thank you, Council President and Mr. Mayor. And thank you to the applicant for your time and explaining all the idiosyncrasies of this parcel and the challenges that you've had. I really want to approve housing, but when this one bounces off our code, there are too many places where it doesn't match up with the code as it's written right now. You know, if there was a request to, and there is a request for parking, just parking or just landscaping, but there's too many things that tally up in my mind that present a challenge for this application, for this applicant and application. I guess what I would say before I hand it over to somebody else, again, I'm not a fan of saying the D word, deny, on housing in our city, especially. I mean, this really is kind of something we want to see in the R3 zone. It really is. And I'm so supportive of that. So I guess sort of outside of the consideration of this project, I'd kind of like to see us as a council down the road sometime is look at ways on, I don't know how many parcels are in our city that are half acre or maybe even smaller, where something like this might happen in R3, where we got to shoot for 14 dwelling units per acre. I feel like there should be some flexibility on these small parcels to make it easier on these applicants to meet code. And I don't know what those things are. Maybe it's loosening landscaping on small parcels, or maybe it's loosening setbacks on small parcels. I don't know what it is. But I'd like to see us figure out possibly a way to do that with a code update. So that's a separate conversation, and I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. But I'm probably going to have a hard time not using the D word, the deny word on this one tonight. So thank you, Council President, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Rasmussen. Any other comments, deliberations from the council members?
Council President, Mr. Mayor. A lot of this may echo Council Member Rasmussen's comments. I typically, and I am very excited when I see infill projects come before us, because it is a very challenging thing to do, and we do need more housing and more creative housing in the city. The unfortunate thing for both the applicant and myself is very recently I've had many conversations with business owners and residents that frankly are questioning why we are allowing such little parking, letting developments come in with such few parking requirements and not requiring more parking spaces. It's very concerning to me, and as everybody that's served with me here knows, I'm very critical of our parking code, and I'm very critical, particularly when applicants come in and start asking for a reduction in the size. And I do recognize and appreciate and applaud the math that you prepared. But I think it was touched on when we start bringing into the conversation compact parking, that relies too generously on people being reasonable and being capable of making that discernment and not just pulling in, throwing it into park and walking into the property. I'm very concerned, as we've begun to see throughout the city, that these double car garages in these small units, one of the bays are being used for storage and the cars are ending up in the streets. And if that were to be the case, even in the scenario of an F-150 and a RAV4, the RAV4 is going to be larger than that compact space in front of the unit. I'm also somewhat concerned about compromising on the landscaping. I think there's a lot of value, and particularly not knowing what some of the future development may be if we compromise on that now, then the future developments around there are strapped with reduced landscaping, right? And that doesn't seem fair or reasonable. However, having said all of this, I struggle to Mr. Rasmussen's point, what does good look like? How could this work on this lot? And so, frankly, as bizarre as it may seem, I would be more inclined to grant a waiver on the number of units versus all of the other requests for waivers. So those are my observations and my comments. You've seen it before, and you're going to see a return to a much more critical approach to the parking and the parking requirements and compliancy to that.
Thank you.
Mr. Council President, I would concur with a lot of what my colleagues have just shared. I really wanted to come into this absolutely trying to figure out if I thought there were ways we could make that work. Obviously asking the question about the connectivity. That's something that I find to be really incredibly valuable. So thank you for being open to that and trying to address that. I think Council President addressed actually the questions that I had about the safety and the access for fire access. And even in terms of what's being proposed, if I'm understanding correctly, it's still somewhat that 26 feet and that ability for the fire trucks to be able to do that, put out their feet for the apparatus is still somewhat dependent, if I think I understand correctly, on those half parking spaces behind the garages. And like Council President Page, if that lot is full and a fire truck needs to arrive and it isn't able to do its job, then not only have the people who live in the units that have been built as a result of this development are those folks at risk, but so are the people who have access to their homes across the property on the shared driveway, as well as those that are around it. And ultimately, as I've thought a lot about this as I was reading through the packet and preparing for today, and I think it's the safety piece of it that really weighs pretty heavily on my mind and my concern. I think the other thing too that I know design review had brought to the forefront, and that is the fact that the mechanical units are at the front of the unit. And gosh, I just think that that's not the most attractive approach. And again, I come back to this question, is this just, we're attempting to try to do too much with what you've been given? And I see the very difficult pickle that you're in because of our zoning as it is. And I, like my colleague, Council Member Jacobson, I'd almost like to rather see, can we figure out a way to do a variance in our own code to be able to allow less density then, so this could be really truly the quality development that I know we all want it to be. And so these are the things that I too am struggling with where this development is concerned, because I'd like to be able to see us to be able to support anybody who wants to come into our city and do infill in it, because it's a big challenge. But that's really where my thoughts are, relying very heavily on the public safety component of it.
Thank you, Councilmember Carver Herbert. Well, I guess it's my turn. Councilmember Jorgensen and Councilmember Carver Herbert took what I thought was going to be my zinger of a close right out of my mouth. With so many waivers being needed in order for this to meet our code, my preference is for dropping the floor of the R3 requirement. If a concession had to be made, I don't want it to be made in the amenities that make life better, right? Green spaces, connectivity, bicycle parking, robust car parking, robust guest parking. But I also understand affordability. And the fewer the units, the less it pencils. And one of our comprehensive goal plans is for this variety of housing, and affordability is something that each of us, it weighs on our mind as Garden City continues to be more and more unaffordable for especially young families. However, for this and many other reasons, my motion here is to adopt the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Committee in denial of this application for the reasons stated by the council members up here.
Thank you. Before we get a motion, Director Thornborough, could you maybe address the questions we had about our code and having a variance for reduced units? Is that something that can be considered, or how that would look like? I'm just curious of your thoughts on that, please.
Mayor, I believe that this application actually predates that requirement, and I can go through code to see, to verify that and the date that came in, but I'm fairly certain that unless this is in a TOD node, which I don't believe that it is, that requirement wouldn't apply to this application.
So they could reduce the number of units, is what you're saying? Or they can't?
That is correct, and I will verify that. I may be speaking out of turn, but I can go back and go through code really quickly.
Okay, so they could reduce the number of units if they so choose.
Certainly, if I am incorrect in that statement, that could be an alternative waiver.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, did you close the public hearing?
I did.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Thornborough. So I don't know if that changed your deliberations.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and respectfully, great question for the director. I appreciate you bringing her up for her expertise. Regardless, Mr. Mayor, even if that was the option we chose, that would require a complete rework, design review, and back before the process, which I realize is time and money, and nobody, we want to be respectful of that. We want to be developer friendly. So my motion would stand as previously stated.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, President of the Council, I believe if I captured it correctly, Director Thornborough stated that the staff, the packet would have to be updated regardless if this were to move forward. Was that correct? Did I capture that incorrectly? I apologize, President.
Mayor and Councilmember Jorgensen, if you wholly adopt the recommendation, no, you could move forward tonight. It would be if you moved to reject the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and approve the application. Staff would request an additional 2 weeks to make sure that we've aligned everything, presuming that you would move forward in some level, and we would tweak based on tonight's discussion and approval findings document as well as conditions of approval.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
So I did misunderstand that, and I appreciate that clarification. Mr. Mayor, President of the Council, I would concur that if this council were to approve with a waiver, a conditional waiver of a reduction in number of units, the need then would be to go back and recast all of the other design. And so it's probably, my assumption is, and I concur with the president, is that the best path forward would be to deny it based on the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations and allow the applicant to make a decision on whether or not to request a waiver with reduction and come back with a new plan.
So I had a motion for denial, no.
And a second.
And a second. Okay, any discussion On the motion? All right, clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Voting yes to deny.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
Motion denies.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, is the motion clear on what they have to do so they can get an approval potentially? Yes, isn't that part of?
Mr. Mayor, President of the Council, my assumption was that when we deny in respect to the planning and zoning commissions, then the reason statements included in the packet would be applicable.
You concur, Mr. Waddams?
Mayor, council members, I think Lucas says on a denial, the council should instruct on how the applicant can get an approval. And here comes Ms. Thorpe. Just want to make sure for the applicants. benefit.
Mayor and members of the council, on page 81, the denial conditions, number 1 states the comprehensive plan and code sections that are found to be deficient and that would need to be amended in the application for approval.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President?
I would withdraw my motion and submit a modified motion to approve the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, including their standard conditions for denial and remedies for a pathway to approval.
I would second.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember?
May I ask Mr. Waddams a question?
Right.
Since we've already voted on that, is that an appropriate thing to do?
Mayor, council member Carver Herbert, I think part of the motion would be to rescind the previous motion. And you already, was that part of your motion?
I think I said that. Maybe I didn't. Amend.
And I think technically, I know what your point is. Technically, if the rest of the council doesn't have a problem with that rescission, I don't think that's under parliamentary procedure.
So can you just restate that again, Council President Page?
Yes, so I would withdraw all prior motions and make this new motion. As to SUB FY 2024-0006, commonly known as Edgemere Subdivision, I move to sustain the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and adopt wholesale their standard conditions for denying and pathways for remedies to approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider, so it sounds like you have an idea of what can be done if you decide to pursue this further with code, and I would obviously urge you to work with the team and see what we can do, because we would like this type of housing. I think it just we just need to make it fit. So thank you for coming and your time and the way you answered and presented was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item G2. We have resolution of the Garden City Council amending development services fees, providing an effective date. We'll wait till she- Dr. Thumar, welcome back.
Mayor, members of the council, sorry about the delay. Thank you for the opportunity to present. Tonight, Development Services Department is requesting approval of Resolution 1239-26 for the development fees in response to the Safe Built request to increase, no, wrong application.
I think we're on resolution.
1239-26, resolution regarding city council mandated development service fees and providing an effective date.
Beginning on page 80 or 101 of the packet.
Thank you.
So one's the second one's to adopt. So this is, so is there confusion? Councilman Jordan?
Go ahead, Jen.
You're
Sorry.
right. You're right.
Okay, thank you. There are two agenda items that are very closely related. The first one is for the increase of development services fees to address a request for an increased fee to the city through our contracted services. The fee proposal is not a holistic review of the development services fee schedule. It's really tailored to look at making sure that the city doesn't end up losing or reducing its share of the fees that come in through redevelopment versus what goes to our contracted services safe build. The big change is regarding inspection fees. And so the big change within their request to their contract is a 22% increase in their inspection fees to the city from $90.52 to $110 per hour. And so the proposal for the inspection fees has corresponded to that. It's hard to do an apples to apples fee increase because we have two different contracted services. We charge our fees currently and is proposed based on the valuation of the project, whereas the Safe Built contract charges on an hourly basis. Our contract with Doppel, however, charges on a valuation. And so we have two different fee structures that we pay to our contracted services. And we have traditionally, as most departments, have a fee structure based on a valuation of a project. And so in looking at what that does to the fee structure, if it's a relatively minor project set at $50,000, the current fee is $674. And the proposed fee would be $850 at about $175 difference. A $300,000 project is a pretty standard new construction of a house. You might go, that sounds incredibly cheap, but the value of the property is not included in the valuation when looking at the fee structures. And the city's fee structure really allows between 14 and 15 inspections, give or take. The way that I came to that number is I went through all of the different inspections that you might have, the footing, the foundations, the framing, the insulation, the final, et cetera, courtesy, and then each inspection type before we charge additional is you get one inspection and re-inspection thereof before the city then would tack on an additional fee under our fee schedule. And so at that $300,000 permit, the fee difference would be about $575, would be not about $575, and say that each one of those 15 inspections would be a $20 increase to the city. That would result in $300 increase. And then if you divide that by 2, give or take, the city would still be getting not quite 50%, but it really depends on where you are in that valuation. So it's really hard to get it exact. And staff did feel like that was pretty close. And then there's also plan review fees where there's the increment would just be tacked on to the current fee in addition. And so in the packet on page 120, staff tried to strike through and yellow highlight the proposed changes that are requested of you tonight. With that, I stand for any questions.
Members, any questions? Dr. Thorburn, what happens to applications that are currently in process?
If we've already charged the fees, they would be already charged, and we do that when they come in. And so those that are already charged, we wouldn't charge additional.
But if there's like something in construction that hasn't been inspected yet, would get the new fee then?
Mayor, no. The way that we charge, where we do try to collect all fees up front.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, okay, thank you, Dr. Thorburn.
Mr. Mayor, can I give a quick legal review? Thank you. Mayor, members of council, I did one legal memorandum for both of these resolutions that starts on page 103 of your packet. First several pages, I transcribed the conversation from January 26th, just to refresh the council's memory on that conversation. And then on page 110 of your packet, I start talking about making sure that this is a fee and not a tax. And so the main thing I wanted to tell you is that our fees, they must be closely tied to the cost of services they support to avoid being classified as a tax. There needs to be an analysis. The analysis has to look at actual cost data, including administrative expenses, enforcement costs, and any other costs directly related to the service. My understanding is our treasurer helped with this to determine what our actual costs were, and that this covers our actual costs. I do get a little confused in the explanation. As long as the council is comfortable, these fees only cover the actual costs, so we don't get sideways legally. That would be my legal review, and I stand with questions.
And we do have a public hearing on this, correct?
Correct, Mr. Mayor. We do need to open the
So I'd
public
like
hearing.
to open the public hearing. Colin, do we have any? All right, anybody online? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And motion. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Actually for the city clerk. So in this calculus, or maybe development services does this, is an accounting provided as the project goes along? So the fees, I understand, are collected up front, but what about costs that come as the project continues to grind on, right? Fees and costs are different.
Mayor, Council President Page, there are certain triggers if there's additional costs to the city. So say during the plan review process, somebody's asking for a building official, I guess exception is the word I'm going to use. There is a fee to the city for the plan reviewer, a building reviewer to look at that. Before we'll process that, we charge that fee to the applicant. Sometimes there are some fees that are nebulous. So maybe they're asking for a meeting that's outside of what's included in what we charge up front. We might go, well, we're going to charge you 1 hour, but if there's any additional work or something along those lines after the fact, we'll invoice you after the fact. But we do try to charge on the upfront for any additional cost to the city. The exception really is these inspections. There could be a situation where somebody has a great contractor and every single time they go out and say it's a big development and there's 30 different houses that are being constructed. Because we have hourly fees, the inspector might be able to go in and know that they're able to just see everything and check everything off, and it's relatively quickly, and it's 20 different inspections. Whereas you might have another house where they have to go back and do an inspection and a re-inspection later that week, every single inspection type that they request. In that instance, that second house would be much more expensive to the city than the ones that are more efficient.
And there's no, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Director Thornborough, there is no way for us to recover that?
Mayor, Council President James, excuse me.
No,
Page.
that's my name.
My apologies. The way that we're currently set up, we just have that kind of piggy bank that we have based on the valuation. There are some projects, let's take the boardwalk, for example, they may have 5 inspections in a day, and instead of constantly charging out that inspection, we do hope that we have more efficient projects than fewer efficient projects. But we do just have kind of a piggy bank for the standard inspections. Now, if they had an inspection and a re-inspection and they still didn't have a pass, that is when we would start charging them based on those additional inspections.
Mr. Mayor, Director Thornborough, question for Mr. Wadums.
Council President?
So then, Mr. Wadums, in your opinion, if development services or the city, whoever that task fell to, if someone challenged the reasonableness of their fee and the city provided an accounting that was close, ballpark, would you see a risk? I mean, is it required to be penny for penny?
Mayor, Council President, no, it does not. The wording in the statute is reasonably related to costs. So as long as the council is comfortable that it's reasonably related to the cost and not projected costs, but actual costs, then it should be fine. That's the standard though.
Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Pleasure, Council.
I move to approve resolution 1239-26, a resolution amending Garden City Development Services fees.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Yes.
That the resolution passes. Moving on with item G3, 1238-26, resolution of Garden City Council adopting changes to the fees paid to Safe Built for services and providing an effective date.
Mayor, members of the council, we have discussed this resolution at the last 2 meetings. And so with that, and we just discussed it in the last matter as well. So with that, I stand for any questions. And I do also want to note that I see that we have a representative from Safe Built online tonight as well. And perhaps if you have any questions, he may be able to answer them.
Members, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution 1238-26, adopting changes to the fees paid and providing an effective date.
Second that as well.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Clerk, call roll.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
No.
Councilmember Page.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the resolution passes. Moving on to G4, resolution 1223. This is a resolution regarding the pathway to the west side of Glenwood Street for the bridge down Riverside Drive. Director Thornborough.
Mayor and members of the council, hello again. Tonight, this next resolution, 1226-26, as the mayor just noted, is a proposed amendment to the state and local agreement for the sidewalk improvements from the Glenwood Bridge to Riverside Drive. The reason for the amendment agreement, it is not intended to change, it will not change any of the financial obligations to the city, but it was drafted more on a standard ITD agreement in the past, and they wanted to more correctly reflect that they are administering the project on behalf of the city instead of the city being the project manager or LTAC being the project manager. And so there was just some updated language specifying who's doing what. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember.
So I'm not as familiar with this, obviously, because I believe it was probably approved previous to my term. Question about the commitment. You mentioned that it will not require any more of a financial commitment for us, but I see that the project's been pushed out. So how does that get covered when we know that inflation continues and project costs always seem to go up? How does that get accounted for in projects like this?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert, certainly that is a risk in pushing out projects. Then there would be if there is an overrun in the project costs, the ITD could potentially come back to the city and ask the city this is a grant funded project. However, the city does have match to go and request for additional funding. They have indicated, not through this agreement specifically, but their staff has indicated that there is a component that they are working on that is separate from this very particular project, but they're grouped together for cost savings. They have indicated that there's a delay in their project, and that's why they're anticipating construction to be pushed out another year to 28, fiscal year 28. That is certainly a risk, though, where things just don't come in under the estimate.
Good question. Thank you. Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Council member?
I move to approve resolution 1223-26, a resolution amending resolution 1210-25.
Second. Motion a second. Quick call, please.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Yes. And with that, resolution 1223-26 passes. Moving on to any unfinished business. New business. All right. We don't have an executive session. I just want to thank everybody for coming in early for Lieutenant Dennis's swearing in. I know that means a lot to him, and so thank you for doing that. Thank you for a good meeting. And with that, the motion to adjourn the meeting.
I so move.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any naysayers?
Aye.